Whenever I want to talk about a high-end Avios credit card here on the channel, I go straight to the British Airways Premium Plus from Amex. And then I also mention its competitor, the Barclaycard Avios Plus, but usually just in passing, as a bit of an afterthought. And lately I've been realizing that it's not quite fair, because the Barclaycard Avios Plus does have its own strengths and advantages even over its Amex competitor. So today we're going to fix that injustice, and we're going to dedicate the whole video to the Barclaycard Avios Plus in order to understand the true value of this card and who it might be the perfect choice for. So if that sounds interesting, then let's dive in. We're gonna start with some basic information about the card, and then we'll focus on the upgrade voucher that the Barclaycard Avios Plus comes with, and that has the potential to save you a ton of Avios when you book reward flights with British Airways in premium cabins. And finally, we're gonna cover some of the unique advantages of this card that its competitor from Amex simply does not have. And with that, let's get started. Barclaycard Avios Plus basically earns you 1.5 Avios per every pound that you spend, and then on top of that, there is also a welcome bonus for new customers that is currently set at 25,000 Avios when you spend 3,000 pounds in the first 3 months with the card. This bonus does occasionally go up during promotions. For example, last year in 2024, it was set at 50,000 Avios for a period of time, but it's a bit hard to predict when the next promotion is going to be, so let's just stick to the 25,000 Avios figure. And in terms of the annual fee, the card costs £20 a month or £240 a year, and since this is billed monthly, you can cancel it at any point and you don't have to pay for a full year. And there is also a way to get this card cheaper, but we're going to talk about that in the second half of this video. But for now, the main advantage of this card that justifies the £20 monthly fee is not the Avios that it earns, or not even the welcome bonus. Instead, it's something that's called an upgrade voucher. Basically, when you hit £10,000 of spend within one membership year with the Barclaycard Avios Plus, you get that very upgrade voucher. The naming is a little bit confusing here because it doesn't actually upgrade anything. Instead, it allows you to book a reward ticket with British Airways while paying a discounted number of Avios. For example, you can book a premium economy ticket while only paying the Avios that are needed for economy, or a business class ticket while only paying the Avios that are needed for premium economy. And we're gonna look at a few examples of how exactly you could use this voucher just in a minute, but first let's get a few caveats out of the way. First of all, the voucher can only be used on BA marketed and operated flights that depart from the UK, and if you are going round trip, then your first flight has to be departing from the UK. Secondly, the voucher can either be used on one round trip ticket or two one-way tickets. So if you're traveling as a couple, you can use the voucher to cover your travel out of the UK, but if you need to come back, you're gonna have to book your flights back either as full price Avios tickets or cash tickets. And finally, the discount that the voucher gives you only applies to the Avios portion of the price, while the cash portion of the price stays the same. So that was most of the fine print. There are a few more gotchas there, but we're gonna cover them right now as we go through some examples of how exactly you could use the voucher. And let's start with the short haul flights here. This covers travel to destinations within Europe and places like Cairo, Israel, Amman, and usually with short haul flights, the only way to use the voucher is to book into Club Europe or business class. So let's take the route from London to Athens as our first example, and it's one of the longer Club Europe destinations at almost 4 hours, but definitely not the longest. So by default, BA is going to charge you 48,500 Avios plus £25 in cash for a return trip between London and Athens in business class. However, you can actually pick a different cash to Avios ratio. For example, if we look at the third option here that says 38,500 Avios, so 10,000 Avios less, plus £59 in cash, so a little bit more cash, that seems like an excellent deal because essentially you are saving 10,000 Avios by paying £34 more in cash. And since 10,000 Avios, if you are valuing each Avios point and 1p, is worth at least £100, that seems like a no-brainer. And generally the rule of thumb when booking short-haul reward tickets is to never go for the first higher Avios lower cash option that BA seems to kind of force you into. Instead, it's best to go for either the third or the fourth option. However, if we then try to apply the upgrade voucher to this booking, we notice that BA no longer gives us a choice in terms of Avios to cash ratio, and instead it forces us into that first high Avios low cash option. And so with the voucher, the price of the trip becomes 27,500 Avios plus £25 in taxes. So you can see that the voucher does save you 11,000 Avios, but it does not quite cut the price in half, again because of BA forcing us into the higher Avios Avios option. And that makes using the upgrade voucher on short-haul flights a little bit less lucrative. And then the other thing is that on short-haul flights, the difference between economy and business class in terms of the experience is not that large. And so you're kind of getting a lot less of a step up thanks to using your Avios and the voucher. But don't get me wrong here, it still can make a lot of sense to use the voucher on a short-haul flight if that aligns with your plans. And in fact, I have used the voucher myself multiple times on a flight from London to Istanbul, and I have been quite happy with the value that I got. However, if you are looking to get the maximum possible value out of the voucher, then we need to look at long-haul flights in premium economy or preferably business class. So let's do exactly that. First, let's take a look at BA's most profitable route from London to New York. And the business class ticket return between London and New York is gonna cost you 160,000 Avios and 375 pounds in cash, which is quite expensive. And again, this is the default higher Avios lower cash option, although 375 pounds is not exactly low, but actually on long-haul flights, this default option makes the most sense because as you go down the list of options and the number of Avios that you need reduces, the amount of cash that you're gonna need is increasing a lot higher, so it doesn't really make sense to go for anything other than option 1 unless you are short on Avios. And then if we apply the voucher, the number of Avios that you need drops almost in half to 85,000 Avios, and then the same 375 pounds in cash. So that represents a saving of 75,000 Avios thanks to using the voucher, which is equivalent to 750 pounds in cash, again if you value each Avios points at 1p. And here, by the way, are the numbers for premium economy on the same route. It's going to be 85,000 Avios plus 300 pounds in cash without the voucher, or 50,000 Avios plus 300 pounds in cash with the voucher. So as you can see, premium economy is not that good of a deal because of the very high cash component. So the Avios, even with the voucher, are not necessarily going to save you a lot of money compared to just booking a premium economy ticket with cash. Unless, of course, you're planning to fly one way, in which case the math is going to change because one-way cash tickets can be extremely expensive. But overall, the biggest amount of value lies in flying in business class on long-haul flights. Now, there is one more thing here. While the fact that the voucher reduces the number of Avios that you need is great, the pricing that BA has on long-haul business class flights for Avios is a little bit ridiculous in the first place, and that is most noticeable when you're flying east. So let's take the route from London to Doha as our next example, just because both BA and Qatar Airways serve this destination with a direct flight. So with BA, it's going to cost you the same 160,000 Avios plus 375 pounds in taxes for a return trip from London to Doha in business class, just because it's the same length of flight as to New York. Qatar, in the meantime, on the same route is going to charge you only 86,000 Avios plus 440 pounds in taxes. So Qatar's prices are already 50% cheaper than BA. So in my mind, part of what the voucher does is it brings down the ridiculous BA pricing on long-haul flights in business class to be more in line with that of other airlines in the alliance. And obviously the voucher does more than that, because with it, the BA prices become a lot cheaper than those of the One World Airlines. And finally, in terms of the upgrade voucher, Barclaycard also gives you the option of getting a 7,000 Avios bonus instead of the upgrade voucher. And in my mind, it's always a poor deal because the voucher will definitely save you more than 7,000 Avios unless you're planning to use it on something like London to Paris trip, in which case it might be better to go for the bonus instead. So that covers everything I wanted to say about the upgrade voucher. And now let's move on to a few extra perks that you unlock on the Barclaycard Avios Plus if you're using both this credit card and the Avios Rewards program. Avios Rewards is basically a program that's only available to Barclays Premier customers, and it carries a £12 monthly fee, and in exchange for those £12 every month, you get 1,500 Avios deposited into your BA account monthly, and then at the end of the year, so after every 12 months, you get an additional upgrade voucher. Whether or not this program is the right thing for you is kind of a topic for another conversation, but if you happen to already be using the Avios Rewards program, then it makes the Barclaycard Avios Plus even more valuable, because when you have both of these things, you get two extra benefits. First of all, you get a monthly discount of £5 on the annual fee. So that means the Barclaycard Avios Plus suddenly costs only £15 a month instead of 20. So per year that works out to £180 over 240. And secondly, and this seems even potentially more valuable, you get 4 complimentary airport lounge passes via Dragon Pass. So if you value each lounge pass at say £20, that works out to £80 in value, unless you already have unlimited lounge access through some other means, like the Amex Platinum card or airline status. So summing this all up, is Barclaycard Avios Plus actually a worse product than the British Airways Premium Plus from Amex? Well, not really. I mean, it is a less powerful product in terms of how far you can stretch your Avios using the voucher, because the Upgrade Voucher, for example, cannot book into first class. But especially for someone who's already in the Barclays ecosystem and is using Avios rewards program, this card becomes extremely attractive as long as you have a good plan on how to use the Upgrade Voucher. And that means having a rough idea of where you want to go, being prepared to be flexible on your dates to make sure you get that Avios availability, and finally having enough Avios in order to pay for your flight wherever you want to go. Because as we saw in our examples, even with a voucher, a long-haul business class flight is going to set you back at least 85,000 Avios. So here's a video where I talk about the best ways to earn some extra Avios, so consider watching it next. And in the meantime, thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.